January the 14th. There's 4 of them listed there. Entertain a motion, Mr. Lindeman.
I move to approve.
I second.
Is that Dr. Gomez?
No, Sabal.
Sabel, please, okay, say your name, please, first, so that we don't go.
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
He's feisty even from home.
Me está regañando el señor. Okay, good. Did we have the roll call?
No.
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Sabal here.
Dr. Gomez?
No, yes or no?
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes.
Lieutenant Loco is it?
Here in the legislature it means yes, right? So it was 2 years. All right, summary of current events, Superintendent Samaniego.
Yes, just have a couple announcements, a few announcements. All of our grants have been submitted, and so we will be hearing from responses and whether they were accepted and funding sources and all that, hopefully beginning July. We also, HR is working on teacher contracts, admin contracts, and so those are being issued by school. And wage notices, after you will all approve the classified staff, they will receive their wage notices soon. I also want to announce that due to the school closure and COVID-19 situation, we will not be providing summer school in the month of June. However, we plan on having a jumpstart program right before the beginning of the school year in July. So all that is still in the works. We feel that bringing some of the kids back right before school starts will at least allow us to get some of that, the kids that have been struggling to get some schooling done before the beginning of the school year. And Superintendent Kathy Hoffman has created a task force for reopening schools in Arizona, and they will be providing us guidelines in the next 2 weeks as to how they foresee our schools reopening. And as soon as I hear what those guidelines are, we will be working with our administrators to make a plan according to those guidelines. Right now, we have not received any information whether it'll be back to normal or some online, some face-to-face instruction, hybrid programs. So as soon as we hear, we will communicate to the board and to our community what the reopening of schools looks like in August.
Okay. Governing board members, Mr. Lindway.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to just comment on our drive-through graduation. I thought that went really well, and I thought it was very well accepted by the community, and I want to congratulate the administration for putting that all together, and thank you very much.
The most, I think, and it wasn't surprising, was the behavior of our kids, the decorum that they showed, the appreciation, the resilience. It was really a fantastic event. And on behalf of the board, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Sabal, Mr. Lindeman, and Dr. Gomez, I'd like to thank the administration for doing a very, very good job in putting that on. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the high school, Randy Walker, Albert Young, Heladina and Angel, Marco and his staff. It took a lot of people. It took a lot of people to put that on and to do it effectively as it was done. And for that, we thank you. And our kids are fantastic. I mean, they showed that, and I hope we can reward them with something January the 20th. I'd be looking forward to that.
June 20th. June 20th.
June 20th, I'm sorry, January, they probably jumped out of their seat, but no, June the 20th. And board members, I hope that if things are lifted even more, that, of course, observing all of the distancing and the restrictions and requirements, that the board can attend that event as well. So with that, let's move on to reports. Business office, Mr. Soto.
Good morning, Mr. President. It's my budget balance report for the month of April. Yeah, any questions you might have? We still have a good almost 4% budget remaining for potential carryover. We still have to wait and see once we close all of the POs and expenditures are done. But that's a good picture, or a good picture of what the carryover may look like. We also have some capital monies available that later on we're going to be talking about the textbook adoption. That's capital item, so we might be using a portion of that to make payments for that adoption. Any questions?
Do you have an update on CARE? Do you have any update?
No, we haven't heard anything yet. We're still waiting in order for us to do the budget revision, the final budget revision. We're waiting for the numbers. We don't know yet. We don't even have an idea how much that money will be. But as soon as we hear something, we'll keep you updated.
Let me ask you another question. First of all, I didn't. It's always difficult when you start thanking people. You always miss people, but I should have also mentioned security, the
Counselors.
cafeteria,
Counselors.
the counselors, maintenance, Mr. Soto's department, everybody that was involved in that. A big thank you from the board. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Regarding that graduation, and I haven't seen anything in the paper about any graduation pictures of the Douglas High School class, which is traditionally done every year. And I'm wondering if there's a specific reason, not only, I don't think it's because of the district's non-involvement, but it evidently could be a newspaper issue that they're not publishing them. Do you know anything about that, Ms. Sullivan?
I don't recall if I already had this conversation with Bruce, but he usually gets those pictures from Douglas High School and does a whole, Cochise County kind of Sierra Vista and Douglas. So I will reach out to him and find out when that is being done, because I don't think it's not going to be done. It's just a matter of when. Or it could be a newspaper issue.
It could be a newspaper issue, and I was thinking, and really, I don't know if Bruce is the person to talk to, because that's a business matter with the dispatch. If it's a newspaper issue, and I think I speak on behalf of the whole board, and it's because of their financial situation, again, our kids deserve that recognition. And I think that if Mr. Soto or Mrs. Samaniego, either one of them, got a hold of the newspaper, and I would say that the publisher, and if it's a newspaper issue and they say that they financially can't do it, this is something that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there's money in printing and publishing and advertising. And this, especially under the circumstances, I don't think you'd get an audit exception, that if it's something that the district could look into and sponsor legitimately, it's printing and advertising, right? That could, I think it's 654 something or whatever. If you'd look into that and just administratively see if you can't, and then if they say yeah, then see what it would cost, and I think we owe it to our kids to have them recognized that way as well.
Yes, I
Okay,
agree.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that, Ms.
No.
Sullivan, or comments? Enrollment report, Mr. Nunez.
Yes, good morning, Mr. President. Currently, the New Student Center has open enrollment underway, and so currently our numbers are 4,076 students this May 2020. So 4,076 students that are currently enrolled.
Okay. And you don't have any type of, members of the board, do you have any questions regarding the enrollment or anything on the business office report under that item E? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the consent agenda. 2A, approval of the following consent agenda items, payroll and expense vouchers, 1 through, I think it's 3. Yes, Mr. Lindeman?
Yeah, I move to approve.
I
Is there-
second the motion. Sabal.
Sabal seconds the motion. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item 3, action items. A, discussion action on the approval of certified hires. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, so we have, as presented, we have one certified hire we are recommending, and that is a teacher for Sarah Marley Elementary, Danielle Hurtado.
Okay, any comments, questions from the staff? Entertain a motion to approve
Move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman. Second,
Second.
Mr. Sabal?
is that Mr. Sabal?
Mr. Sabal. Mhm.
Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item 3B, discussion action on the approval of certified resignations. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and before you, we have Mr. Nunez, Assistant Superintendent, who will be resigning from our district effective June 30th, and moving to the Phoenix area. And so it is with much regret that I bring this to you. I told Fernando I may have made a decision to take it off the agenda this morning. But I do want to thank Mr. Nunez. He's been a great team player for me. He's been my right hand, and he brought a lot of knowledge and skills to us from, his other areas of work that he had. So we're going to miss him deeply, and we know he's going to be a phone call away. So we wish him well. Thank you, Mr. Nunez.
And I'll echo that on behalf of the board. First of all, we congratulate you and wish you the best in your new endeavors. Sincerely going to miss you. You are kind of the shadow person that we don't hear too much of, but we know all the work you do. I personally, as being part of some of the committees ex officio that I've worked with you, it's been a pleasure. And you certainly deserve whatever is coming to you, and we wish you the very best. And I'll entertain a motion to approve that with deep regrets.
I'll make that motion, but I also wanted to say thank you for your service for our community and our students, and Mr. Nunez.
Is there a second?
Second with the regrets.
That's Mr. Sabal. All right, any further discussion?
Mr. Bering?
Yes, Doctor.
Mr. Bering?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, I think every time we make a motion, we have Mr. Lindemann and Mr. Sabal second. That way we don't have to jump in.
Well, first of all, I saw a program the other day that came from the state level, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Ed. They talk about the difficulty of having these kinds of meetings because, it's difficult for me. I miss you guys. I really do.
I know.
I wish you were here.
I don't.
But it is very difficult, and I'd done this many times before at the state level, but it was a little bit more sophisticated, not only because of the communication, but because of the way the meetings were conducted. But that's a good idea. So, Dr. Ed, what we can do without any presumption or any violation of the open meeting. Mr. Lindemann, and I want to thank him. Actually, I'm glad, again, that he's down here every day so that we have the facility and the ease for him to make the motion. And then if Mr. Sabal will do the second, if he feels, and he's not obligatory because then it looks like it's a foregone conclusion and we don't need the motion. But Mr. Sabal, if you will make it, and then Dr. Ed, that was a very good suggestion. I appreciate it. And so we'll go from there from now on. Okay, and that'll make it easier for Alma.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Mr. President, may I?
Mr. President, Mr. Ramos.
Yes. Yes,
I
Mr. Ramos.
just wanted to give me a chance before we take a vote of that. I just wanted to thank Fernando for all his work. He was great for the district, and I'm sorry to hear that he's leaving, but I wish him the best.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. It's always good to have these homebred people. And sometimes, people administratively complain that you get too inbred and you don't see things from the outside. And fortunately, Mr. Nunez had been to the big city, actually the city, and he came back and he brought a lot of good ideas, and he was very innovative in the way he did a lot of things. So anyway, I wanted to mention, thank you for that comment, Mr. Ramos. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, sir.
And is that for item 3A? I mean 3B?
Yes.
3B. Okay,
Just
roll call.
vote.
Mr. President, may I just quickly share, just?
Go ahead.
I promised Superintendent Samaniego that I'd be brief, be brilliant, and be done. I'm not sure about the brilliant part, but again, just to reiterate, I want to thank you. Thank you all. I'm grateful for the governing board and Superintendent Samaniego for the opportunity to serve Douglas as the assistant superintendent. It was good to be home. I learned so much from you all, and you made me a better administrator and a better person. I do have to say, even though I've had experiences in many other places, including the city, right? Douglas Unified has some of the most talented people and group of professionals that I've ever worked with, and I do mean that sincerely. I feel that, Superintendent Samaniego has demonstrated strong leadership in working alongside her, her character and heart, and so, and a vision for being innovative and progressive in Douglas, which we know it's a small town and it's nice to be home, but I applaud you for that, Ana. And it's been my honor to serve the staff, students, and the community of Douglas in this capacity. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Roll call.
roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
No. Yes, Judy. Yes.
Mr.
I
Burry?
will chime in on that one.
Mr. Burry?
Yes. Item 3C, discussion action on the approval of classified transfer, Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, Tessie has resigned from the teaching position, and she had been a former parent liaison. So obviously, she understands that the pay has changed.
And the reason for it being an agenda item is there's a difference in pay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman, Mr. Sabal.
Second the motion, Sabal.
Mr. Sabal, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item 3D, discussion action on the approval of classified staff hires for the 2020-21 fiscal year. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, these are the employees that are currently working for us, so we are bringing them forth for a wage notice for next year.
Okay, is there anything that you need to add regarding the salaries or?
No, because that's already been approved, so the new
Discussed and approved,
salaries
yeah.
will be
Included.
included.
Okay, entertain a motion
Move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman.
Second.
Second by Sabal. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Here.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes. I do have a quick question regarding the funds on that. Is there been any notification or any information from the state regarding the legislation that kept it through the school year about how that's going to be carried on? Go ahead, Mr. Soto.
Yeah, I mean, they clarify that, and we're good to go up to June 30th, basically, which is the end of the fiscal year, not the school year. So
Okay.
we're going to be still receiving funds until June 30th.
Okay, very good. All right, item 3E, discussion action on the request to Cochise County for disbursement of tailored grazing funds and forest fees funds. Mr. Lindeman,
Move to approve.
Second the motion.
second by Sabal. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes. Item F, discussion action on the approval of continuing investment resolution with the Cochise County Treasurer's Office. Who's going to take care of that, Mr. Soto?
Yeah, I can do that. Again, this is a yearly item, just to confirm that the county is our bank. They do our deposits and all the money goes through them. So it's just the approval of that agreement between us.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
By Mr.
Second the motion.
Second by Sabal. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
President, Mr. President, I just wanted to ask a question, Peter.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me, this is Mr. Ramos. Of those bonds that the money is being reinvested, the interest rate on the gains, is that directly sent into the funds, usable funds, or is it reinvested?
Bonds? He said bonds? Funds?
Can you repeat that again, Mr. Ramos? Your question?
Okay. Well, we have an investment with agreement with the county for them to take any money that we have in excess left over to be invested into looks like mutual funds and or bonds. And the question was, the gains on that, are they deposited into the account to be used in the year, or are they reinvested into the same portfolio?
Yeah, it's they do that every year, and when they do give us that interest, or they give us the option if we want to keep it there. But what we're doing is just we're asking for the money to be deposited in our accounts. And remember that the way this works is the state sends the money to the county, and then the county gives us the money. But yeah, for investment purposes, yeah, they have the authority to make decisions, but they always ask us what to do beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a
This is
motion.
Ed.
Dr. Ed had a
Dr.
This is Ed, right? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Soto, kind of tell me, because I don't understand what this is. I mean, do we have money with the county, or where did that money come from?
Yeah, like I just said, I mean, it's the way this works. In order for us to get our money, it has to go through the county. So the state sends the funds every month, and it goes through the county. The county records everything and allocates the funds to the specific funds that they needs to go, and then they make it available for us. So they're the in-between guys.
Yeah, excuse
Okay.
me. Go ahead, doctor. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
But you need to explain the investment part of it. You explained where the funds come from and it goes to the county treasurer, but this is a resolution to allow them to invest it. I think you need to explain that.
Okay, so the way it works is they have the authority to find the best places to invest the money that will give us the best interest rate or return in investment. But again, they always ask us for approval from us. They just don't do it directly. They could, but they don't. So it's basically them asking for permission to invest our monies.
Yeah, that's, members of the board, that's the reason why this board has to approve specifically their investment authority. Because you all know that the county, the state, they invest money and they get a return on it. So
Correct.
thanks for those questions and thanks for the clarification, Mr. Soto. All right,
Okay.
we have a motion on the floor?
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
yes,
Mr. Barin?
Yes. Item G, discussion action on the approval of the ASBA proposed 2020 political agenda. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Samaniego because there's not much that that we can do with that other than just to put it on the agenda
Yes.
and just wish them well.
Yeah, so it's as presented, and that was G, right? On the
Yes.
proposed
Yes.
political agenda, and so there's really not much to it, other than you have some dates. Normally, we would have selected, Alma, a delegate at this meeting, but we'll do it in September.
All right, so actually, there's nothing for us to approve, because normally, we would be approving
The delegate,
items, the political agenda, and there isn't one included. So we're just going to pass this up, not going to table it, not going to do anything with it except just,
The agenda is attached, so you just have to,
oh, was there an attachment to it?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
I
just
didn't,
have
oh,
to-
I'm sorry, I didn't see it, that's why I thought,
it's towards the end. It's those
Three
colored
last
papers.
pages,
the problem is, well, we'll go ahead and approve their attachment. In other words, we're not going to submit any ourselves,
No,
but we'll
no.
approve their political
Yes.
agenda. Okay, so, Mr. Lindeman,
I move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Sabal?
Mr. Sabal.
Second.
Mr. Lindeman, do you want to comment on that? Because you're generally pretty active with that.
Well, thank you. I am the delegate for the district, and at the last delegate assembly, what we do is we go through the items that we're going to put forth for the next year, and this is part of that package.
And it's part of the package that nothing that we submitted, but
No,
part of
we
their
haven't.
package.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
theirs. It's
good.
ESBA.
Dr. Ed, did you have a question?
No, no.
Oh,
Fine.
okay. All right. Did somebody else have a question?
No.
Okay, roll call. No,
Mr.
we need a motion first, right?
No, we got it.
Mr. Lindeman on second already.
Okay, got it. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes. Item 3H, discussion and action on the approval of the environmental access agreement between Douglas Unified School District 27 and the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality for the air quality surveillance system. Mr. Mr. Soto or Ms. Samaniego?
Either one. We've had Candy reviewed the agreement and has approved it and worked with that entity to make sure that the language was appropriate. And basically, this is a monitoring system that is located at one of our sites next to the Red Cross building, the old Red Cross building, in front of the high school. And it's been there for many, many years before even Cesar's time. So every 10 years, this agreement will be presented, and it just monitors the air quality. And so, Cesar, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I mean, it's just that agreement, and they do have access, direct access to that site. So it's just basically a permission for them to access that.
Okay, actually, the agreement was signed by me way back in, I forget, but it's a very, very small
Yes.
area. You
Yes.
can't even hardly tell it's there.
No.
Yes.
It's just one of those little monitors that you see on the highway and things like that. All right, entertain a motion to
I
approve
move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman.
Second.
Did he second?
Yes.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes. Discussion action on the approval of the English Arts textbook adoption for Douglas Unified School District number 27. Ms. Samaniego, I want to turn that over to you.
Okay. So just a quick update, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Nunez, who's going to be presenting the whole process. But, this district has not had a textbook adoption for a long, long time. Due to I think the reason behind it is very costly, to do a textbook adoption. So this textbook adoption is for ELA K-12, and it involves a long process. It usually takes about a year for a textbook adoption process to even begin and end. And so before you today, Mr. Nunez and the committee have made a recommendation based on everything that they've done, and I am very proud of the work that Mr. Nunez and his team did, the coaches. Special thanks to Ms. Carla Campillo Soto, who really was Mr. Nunez's assistant in getting all of these materials here, reviewed by the different committees. So she put in a lot of work into this along with Mr. Nunez. So I'll turn it over.
Thank you. So, again, I think, having the opportunity to work closely with the Curriculum and Instruction Department this year, we looked at a lot of things that took place last year. And so some of the concerns were having a research-based, a viable curriculum. And so like Superintendent Samaniego mentioned, the last curriculum adoption was prior to 2005. And so working closely, Ms. Campillo Soto was definitely my right hand, sometimes my left too, and looking at what were some of the things that came out of school improvement. So one of the things that we wanted to do is involve as many stakeholders as possible. Mr. Soto was a part of that committee. Superintendent Samaniego would oftentimes join in and be a part of the conversations that were taking place. So we had representation from curriculum and instruction, state and federal programs, Ms. Denise Cox, Katie Walker representing ESS, and a total of approximately 57 of our staff members were a part of this, including principals, directors, and parents. So yes, having Carla as my right hand, sometimes my left, was really meaningful in her role as school improvement specialist, but also this year in working closely with parents and getting to hear from parents as well. So in accordance with Governing Board Policy IJJ, which is the Textbook Supplementary Materials and Adoption, we developed the DUSD ELA Textbook Adoption Committee, made up of 57 staff members. We sent out a request for bids based on our needs assessments for school improvement. 7 publishers responded to our request, and following those same state requirements, as well as our governing board policy, we had all the materials on public display for a minimum of 60 days, with evaluation forms, rubrics. Based on the fact that COVID-19 and the school closure, quote unquote, happened, we were innovative enough, and with the support of, again, our central office, Carla, we were having meetings. We continued as business as usual and still made these items available via our district website. Alma was there as well along the way. And so this process took us up until April 30th, 2020, where 3 publishers were selected and were reviewed and finalized by all the stakeholders. And so we voted as part of the process. 49 of our staff members and our committee members voted for Pearson. 3 voted for another program, and 5 abstained, including myself and Ms. Campillo Soto. So the DUSD ELA Textbook Adoption Committee is proudly recommending Pearson as our new ELA textbook adoption for kindergarten through 12th grade as a means of grade level articulation, costs. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Campillo Soto, or Mr. Cesar Soto, that can talk a little bit more specifics of the program, and as well as some of the cost and some of the viable options that we have.
Very good, thank you.
Marco, can you please move, keep going on the slides? He covered almost everything, thank goodness, because otherwise I would have talked forever. Okay, keep going.
See, we know each other.
Yeah. More. Until you find the slide that says White Pearson. There we go. So the reason, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why we chose Pearson was because this is a K-12 program. That was the main reason why, from the high school all the way to kinder, the committee decided that a consistent language amongst all grade levels was needed, and this is something that hasn't happened before, at least since 2004. The goal was to develop a common language amongst all grade levels, and that the consistency of complexity on what is being taught goes from kinder all the way to 12th grade, so we can have those conversations across and, horizontally. They also have a technology component that we didn't think it was as important before COVID-19, and now we deem as essential. Most of their lessons are both online and connected to Google Classroom, which now it is the system that we're using to connect with the students. And they are providing all of the consumables for the students for the next 6 years. They're also including the 6-year agreement for their intervention program that is called Success Maker. And this is a true intervention program where students who have skills and they're struggling with them are actually able to work along with whoever's their tutor and keep working on it even if they're at home. It doesn't require for an expert to sit next to the student to be able to use that, and it's going to be available for 20% of the student population, which is for about 483 students. Same with the ELD companion, because this is something that was a big concern for the high school and the special ed program. So if we can go to the next slide, Mark. Thank you. This is exactly what the proposal includes. It's a 6-year agreement, and it would include all the student consumables, all of the digital coursework, K-12, and it's important to note that Pearson actually has an app where the students can go into the app and have access to the books that they're going to be reading for free. They don't have to pay a dime. We don't have to pay a dime because it's already included, at least for the next 6 years. It includes all of the teacher editions, the ELD digital interventions for 6 years for 20% of our students, all of the teacher assessment packages. So the online resources are actually all printable, because that was one of the biggest concerns that the teachers had, that sometimes we do have problems with accessing technology when we're all assessing at the same time, but Pearson has showed us how to print those materials without us having to do anything else other than to click print. They are providing professional development. They included 2 days of professional development for high school and I think it's 2 days for professional development for the elementaries as well for the initial implementation. But it's important to know that every single thing that they're teaching us, there's actually an online tutorial, so teachers have the possibility of going back and repeating, going through the same process as many times as needed without having to request more professional development. Because we asked them for a proposal for a K-12 6-year, they actually gave us a discount of $52,000 on the shipping and handling fees. So the original cost was $766,000 for 133 with 16 cents. With the discount, it's going to be $714,304 72 cents. Can we go to the next page, Mark? So something that we were concerned about was how were we going to pay for this agreement? And before we presented, we had the opportunity to request for a recommendation. We wanted to make sure that we were able to, cover the cost. So we went back and had a series of talks and negotiations with Pearson, and they actually agreed to let us make 3 fiscal year payments. So that would be divided $238,000 for fiscal year 1, $238,000 for fiscal year 2, and $238,000 for fiscal year 3. So that was a big advantage to us. Mr. Soto was included in the conversations. It took us a little bit of time, but Pearson was, agreeable into the fact that it's extremely hard for any school district in this specific situation that we're going through, where we're not sure how funding is going to look like for next year, to be able to pay, $400,000 right now, $300,000 later. So they agreed to a 3-year payment. Any questions so far?
Mr. President, if I may.
Is the presentation over so far?
I just have 2 more things to say, okay?
Why don't you, and then we'll open it up for
Okay.
discussion.
So there are some things that I want you to keep in mind. Yes, we are adopting, or we're requesting that you accept this textbook adoption so we can start doing the legwork, but the legwork still needs to be done. The 6th through 8th grade English Language Arts team needs to get together because we have reading teachers and writing teachers, so they need to develop pacing guides for writing, and we also need to have some curricular work done for the 612 ELA because we had an explosion of ELD students at those grade levels, which is something that we didn't see in the years past. So we need to develop some curricular support for those teachers. So they do need to work with the curriculum. That's going to be needed regardless of whether we do the adoption or not, but it's going to be needed more as we do the adoption. We do receive professional development from the companies, but the grade levels are still going to have to do extra work to sit down and figure out how this is going to work out for them separately from the professional development. And it is very important to note that the ELD teachers and the ESS teachers are still going to need some resource support because we have large numbers and they have to figure out how this is going to work for them. That's especially at the middle school and the high school.
How long has Pearson been in business? How long have they been supplying this type of program? This is an old company, right?
Yes, yes.
But
A very experienced company.
But specifically the ELD. Do you know how long? Did you look at all of their panoply of recommendations and testimonials and all these things from districts that are similar to Douglas?
So I'm going to be very honest. I left it to the committee to do that. I was part of the committee, but I also abstained from trying to provide extra information. I gave the committee access to all of that information, but I let the committee decide. I cannot give you that information at this moment because that was something that the committee asked the questions and I got them in contact with Pearson.
Carla, can I
yes.
just jump in? One of the things that we did look at is, and that's why we were so strategic from the beginning to be inclusive of school improvement efforts that we have in Arizona, as well as some of the shifts in English language development that have really come to light most recently, as well as the component of the high need for intervention supports for ESS students or that fall under the special ed umbrella. So looking at that, the programs that we looked at, that was one of the biggest questions people had. What were the intervention type supports? As Carla mentioned earlier, this program, Pearson, does have a program called Success Maker that comes included, and I've utilized that in Phoenix as well, as well as Carla has. And so that provides those intervention supports too for our English learners as well as our ESS students. More so, there's a scope and sequence that's a part of this program that talks about some of the English learner scaffolds and how to differentiate in your classroom, because oftentimes that is a high need, especially in communities such as Douglas, but I think that's all across the state in general because there's a high number of English learners. This program does provide a lot of interventions, and the professional development behind it, like Carla mentioned, is just a click away. That oftentimes, how do I teach this lesson but provide those intervention supports, where oftentimes that was one of the biggest questions with regard to the prior program that we were implementing and how we're meeting the needs of our English learners.
So
So that's included in the
Yes.
cost?
Yes.
That component, the
Yes. Correct.
teacher
Yes.
support?
Well, and to add to that, I just finished, I'm part of the committee that creates the ACELA test items for the Arizona Department of Education. I work in the revising and question items for the K-first grade levels. And I will say this, with Pearson. That's why I completely abstain from the vote. I will say this, the level of complexity of those assessments is very related to the level of content that they are offering. So
Were they involved, and I'll turn it over to you, were they
Yes.
involved in any other demographically situated districts like Douglas
Yeah.
along in Arizona?
They do a lot of work in Phoenix. I didn't ask about the other districts around, but I know for a fact that they do have a few districts that are doing a lot of work with Pearson. I can come back and get you that information, like the specific school
Well,
districts.
needless to say, if you look at San Luis, you look at Somerton, then you go to Nogales, you go to Douglas. Those are the districts. Did they work with them at all? Because as we all well know, this is the heart of our curriculum, in my opinion, because this is where we have to concentrate the most. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean,
Yeah.
but to give it broad in the whole sequence of how these kids progress, this program is going to be of utmost importance. It's going to be the heart
Correct.
of it. So the only reason I asked that about Pearson, I know they've been in business for years, but
Right.
I don't know how long they've been doing this, but if we got some good testimonials from some other districts regarding that it was success. The one last thing I'll say is the program that we spent so much money on, that we paid for with Title I, what does that do to that program if the board adopts this? In other words, you know.
Are we talking about Study Island?
I can't think of the name.
Is that the assessment program,
No.
Study Island?
It was the former adoption, you're saying?
Right.
So part of governing board policy mentions that you do not utilize your former program when the new adoption is in place. The other part that I want to add to it is that we are looking at this adoption because many things, like Carla mentioned, have changed, including our state assessment system. So the level of difficulty has increased for now the AZM2, and this is connected to that, as well as our state standards have changed. So when we had the original adoption, we're still using Arizona state standards. Now it's the Arizona College and Career Ready standards, and so we have to shift with the times, and this program adapts with those standards as well.
Although I will have to say, Mr. Brain, regardless of the program that we adopt, should it be this one or another one, the reality is that we do need to do a lot of curricular work with the ELD department, especially at the 612. Like I said before, we do need to provide a little bit more of support. But it was exactly those same departments that voted unanimously for this program, because they thought that the level of complexity that Pearson was offering was appropriate for them. And that's something that they've been asking for many years. So I completely agree with you, and I will go back and look for those testimonials.
Well, you know, the important thing is, you guys are the experts, you're the professionals. If the administration and all of the work that you've all done, the only thing I like to look at is to see how they've fared in other places
Correct.
with the same demographics as we've got. Because, you know, you can talk about Phoenix and you can say, well, they've been successful in Flagstaff. The type of student we're dealing with is much different than those, because those people generally are second, third generation. We're first generation with these kids here, and it's a completely different learning environment. And you know, Mr. Nunez talked about the scope and sequence. That's extremely important
Yeah.
in this district especially. Okay, we'll come back to the money in a minute. Mr. Lindeman, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that any of our students that need to benefit from this program would get the opportunity to do that. Because you mentioned 20%. Well, I think there's more than 20% of our students that would really need a program such as this. So I wanted to make sure that
So
there would be access to
you're
for that.
you're absolutely correct. To respond to what you said, Mr. Brain, you're absolutely correct, but I would like to add one more thing to that combination. What research shows is that what really makes the difference between being successful with a program or not and the content of that program or not, especially on the ELD, is the efficiency of the teacher when implementing the program and looking for the resources that will support it. That is the part where I was discussing the importance of getting together with the ELD teacher, the ELD teachers, and making sense of the program for us. You are absolutely correct in the sense that this is a different situation than Phoenix, but we have excellent teachers that can make this program or any other program work. Now, do they need extra resources? I'm there with you. I completely support you.
Just to answer Mr. Lindeman's question, Mr. Lindeman, the program is available for all students,
Yes.
K-12. The intervention that Carla spoke about was Success Maker, that is provided for 20% of the students as a minimum. I mean, if we needed for additional students, that would be a fair expense under Title I or whatever it comes with it. But those students are based on the data, based on the information, just at a minimum, it's kind of giving you a rough estimate. But would be those students that maybe are not being as successful, but just provides a little bit of those scaffolds and supports to kind of, to bring them up. So,
Okay, thank you very
thank
much.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you for asking that.
And also remember, and I know you took this into account, and I know that the high school was involved, and I'm sure you have
Yes.
some very capable, but remember that in a school district like Douglas and all the other ones along the border, there's a great importance needs to be emphasized on the interjection of when those students are interjected into the
Correct.
program. In other words, we might get somebody, when school starts,
Yeah.
that's going to be in the, if they're evaluated, they're placed as a junior that speak absolutely no English. And so that to me is extremely important, and I know that you looked into that. Members of the board, do
Yes.
you have any questions or comments before we get into the money part of it?
No.
Okay, no other comments from the board? Mr. Lindeman, do you have any?
I did have a question on the money, but we'll get to that.
Okay, did you want to add anything else?
No, that's it, sir.
And I want to thank you.
Thank you.
We'll thank you again at the end for the presentation, but let's talk about, was this, when you look for bids, was this the lowest bidder? In other words, the lowest interested party?
So I'll be very honest with you, sir. We did not look at any prices until the committee voted for the three finalists. We didn't ask, didn't inquire absolutely anything, because what we wanted the teachers to do was to look at the content of the program itself without taking into consideration anything else. Once they decided for those three finalists, we went back to those three finalists and we asked them for 6-year proposals. And then we brought them back to the committee and presented different scenarios of like, okay, this is what happens if we go K8 or K8, 912, or K5, 612. And even with all of the combinations or companies independent from each other, the difference was for about from $70,000 to $100,000 less with Pearson.
Of course, I knew that, and I just wanted you to say that
Yes.
because when you compared them all, and this is the one you selected, it did happen to be the one that
Yes.
was the least expensive, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, but that's important because after you did all of the evaluation and all the research, it turns out that so nobody can come back and say, well, you took the cheapest
Yes,
one.
and I do want to make at that point, because that came up in the last voting meeting, that we may be going with a company that was more beneficial financially, but not beneficial to our students. And Mr. Nunez said it very well. Everybody had an opportunity to vote at that meeting and had an opportunity to look at all the resources. So I was very pleased that the committee majority voted to go with Pearson, setting aside the financial piece of it. And I think that's important that we say it.
Okay, you want to talk about the cost and how you arrived at what you're gonna do and how you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah, again, like
For the board needs to know that.
yeah, the presentation says that the total cost was $766,000. But then Pearson was kind enough to give us a discount for shipping and handling for 50-some thousand. So the total cost is $714,000 and some change. Of course, I don't have that kind of money to pay up front for a program like this. And I also want to reiterate what everybody's saying. We went. We didn't want the committee to have the money consideration, so they can focus on what's best for the students. I'm not saying money is not important, but I mean that's what I wanted. So now negotiating a little bit with Pearson, I told them I don't have $715,000 to pay you right up front. So we have to come out with a payment plan that you can live with, and then we can live with. There was a lot of plans presented, even a 50-50, but then again, I don't have $350,000 to pay up front 1 year and then $350 the other one. So I'm very pleased that to still late last night and early this morning, we came out with a 3-year plan, and they sent us this letter saying that we'll be making payments of $237,427. The due date will be July 15, 2020, which will give me a little bit of time with monies from this school year and maybe with a new allocation for the new school year, which will be for the 2021. And then the second payment we have up to August 15, 2021, and the third one, August 15, 2022. So again, big thank you to Pearson, because not only that they give us the discount of $50-some thousand, but they are not charging interest for this payment plan. So it's just the total amount, the cost, and we're just paying on 3 years. There's no interest. They're not going to benefit on top of that. So again, thanks to Ms. Campillo and Mr. Nunez about negotiating. I'm already forgot about you. So that's the payment plan. Again, there's no penalty, of course, if we pay before those due dates, which I'm going to try to do. But of course, they're saying if you don't pay on time, there might be a discontinuation of the service, blah blah blah. But I mean, it's a good plan I can live with, and it's doable for 237. Keep in mind that this is a capital item, so this will have to come from capital or district additional assistance monies. But we have other cash accounts that we can complement and make those payments.
Okay,
If
so
I can
from-
add, I'm so sorry, sir.
Let me just make sure, let him finish up here. You're going to take the money from capital, but there are other areas and funds that federal
Yes.
funds that
A
are
portion is going to be paid
applicable
of
here.
Title
So
I.
How much, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's important for the board to know because of the finances. How much actually is going to affect the district capital, notwithstanding the monies you can draw from federal programs?
It's not a big amount coming from federal programs. It's calculated close to $15,000 every year. So it will be a total of $45,000 for the whole 3 years. And then the rest, I'm assuming 70% or it will come from district additional assistance or capital. And then the rest, it was going to come from the cash accounts we have. This money that we generate, like for the lease for the ELC school, that will generate a kind of almost enough money to make the payment, and then complement it with capital and the Title
you
I.
professionally feel comfortable with
Yes.
the board making this expenditure?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay, now I'll go back to Ms. Campillo. Do you call him Mr. Soto at home too, or do you call him Ms. Campillo?
You don't
I
want to
call-
know.
Anyway, go
just
ahead.
like-
Go ahead.
I don't think I can pronounce the names that I use, sir. I just wanted to add one more thing. One of the biggest comments that we got on all of the feedback and the written rubrics was the teacher concerned that they were looking at the samples, but that what we would order for teachers, if whatever program we approve, was not going to be what's in the samples, because usually we get the basic. That's not the case. What we did, the price includes exactly what was in the samples and everything else we could get. So this is one of those rare occasions where we can actually say, whatever it is that you saw and whatever it is that you experimented with, we're getting it. So, and for the teachers, not for the lead teacher, but for the teachers.
Okay,
I did tell Mr.
members of the
Soto he
board.
needs to watch out for her because she is a negotiator to the finest
Yes.
line. So,
Mr. President.
I want to again just thank you, Carla, for all of the support. Thank you so much.
Mr. President.
Stay up there because I'm going to open it up for questions on members of the board.
Yes.
Talking about the program and the finances. So, members of the board, do you have any questions regarding anything, the finances or the program itself?
Yes, I do.
Is that Dr. Ed?
Dr. Ed.
Yeah, go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, this is Dr. Ed. Okay, two questions because, I'm hard of hearing and it's kind of hard sometimes to understand. We are going to pay a one-time fee for 3 years? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, but the total amount is going to be divided in 3 years.
So it's a payment plan, Dr. Ed. The amount will be divided in 3 payments over the next 3 years.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
But after the three payments, we will have paid
The total
what
amount.
was charged to us.
Correct.
Yes, okay, good.
Was that it? Any other members of the board?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ed. How about you, Mr. Lynn?
I just had a question. Did we, during the negotiations of the payment schedule, did you talk about a pay-as-you-go plan for like 6 years? A payment every year that you're using it?
Yes, we did. We made an offer of paying 30% at the first year, and then the rest of the years, like 20% until we were done. We didn't feel that was a very favorable position for them, so they came back with a 2-year payment plan, and we came back with a 3-year
So
payment plan.
so Pearson wouldn't like that?
No.
Oh, okay.
When will the materials be available?
June 30th, if we send the paperwork by May 14th.
Okay, so, did you have anything else you wanted to say, Mr. Soto, regarding the finances? How about you, Mrs. Samaniego?
No, I think we've been looking at the funding for quite some time, and last night Carla sent us a text and said, let's celebrate. Celebrate. The negotiation went through because when we left the office yesterday, we still didn't have a yes on the 3 payment plan, but later in the evening, Carla sent us a text, so we're good to go.
Mr. Nunez?
No, I think it's interesting because Mr. Soto usually doesn't budge, like with funding, but he's been so supportive. I just, again, from the beginning, having the superintendent as a part of this, again, I do reiterate what I shared earlier, the character, integrity, and that's definitely something you don't see in a lot of places. So thank you for that, and thank you for making this happen to serve so many students and teachers in the district. So thank you.
And you're going to guarantee that these materials are going to improve our ratings and rankings and instruction?
I can guarantee we're
especially?
going to try our hardest.
Instruction especially.
Yes.
Carla, you have to stay here for the next 6 years.
7.
You keep calling me.
So, I think what's really important here is that curriculum always reflects the community you serve, right?
Yes.
And we serve those students who have a dire need for this type of instruction.
Yes.
And when we talk about curriculum, we talk about the text, we talk about the instruction, we talk about the seminars, all of those things that are involved in curriculum. I hope that with the adoption of this, because we had been in the mire for so long with that other program without taking a look at it, that we start seeing some improvement. But when I talk about improvement, I think it's important to note that this is for our students. This is for our kids, that we offer them the best possible instruction that the district can provide, right? So thank you so much for all the work
Thank you,
you
sir.
did. You did a lot of work, and I mean, if that patio being as cluttered as it was for all that time is any indication of it, that's what you did plenty. And thank you, Mr. Nunez. You gave it your last shot. That was your parting shot, leaving the district. And Anna, you oversee those kinds of things. You're doing a great job doing that. And so, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you, Mr. Soto, for providing that money and being the good steward that you are of those monies, and providing us, the board, the ability to do the things we need to do. All right? So, if there are any more questions by the board or any further discussion, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve as presented. So I'll start with Mr. Lindeman.
I move to approve the motion as presented.
Okay,
second the motion.
second by Mr. Sabal. Any more discussion? Again, thank you, Carla, for all the hard work you did and all the time you put in on that. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes. Item 4, discussion items, requests for future items. Members of the board, announcements, Ms. Samaniego?
Yes, so our last day of school is May 20th. That is next
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. So just wanted to let our parents and our community know that they should be receiving communication from each of the schools and administration on possibly the last day that there will be assignments either given or posted. We know that the last paper packet was already printed on the 11th, right? And so that was the last paper packet, which would carry them through the end of, I believe, this week. So I want to thank our teachers that have been working very hard to complete the distance learning, and our administrative staff too.
Okay, anything else, members of the board? Members of the board, again, thank you for going through this cumbersome ceremony that we have to every time we meet like this, and I don't know how long we're going to have to do it, but I thank you for the patience and your cooperativeness, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
By Mr. Lindeman.
Second the motion.
By Mr. Sabal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.